Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Craig and this is the Grow Paradise tropical style garden that's growing in the southwest of the UK. Now in this video I'm going to give you 10 tips on how you can grow your own tropical style garden. No matter how big or small, sunny or shady your garden is, you too can grow a garden that looks as lush and exotic as this. So before we get started, I just want to say, if you're enjoying the content that's coming out on the Grow Paradise channel, then please hit the subscribe button. It's the easiest way to support the channel. It helps the community grow and keeps us growing fantastic tropical plants, and we can share instructions and guides and garden tours with all of you. Thank you. All right, let's get into the video. Okay, we're starting down low because in the famous words of Drake, we started from the bottom and now we're here. Now in gardening, that means start with the soil. My garden was on heavy clay soil, which is waterlogged and really difficult for plants to become established in. I enriched it with rich organic matter, and for me, spent mushroom compost was the solution. Now, spent mushroom compost is the byproduct of the mushroom production industry, and mushrooms grow so quickly that there is loads of nutrients left in the compost by the time that the industry is done with the growing medium, and we can use that as gardeners to enrich our soils because it's enriched with all of that fungal life, and fungal life is key to healthy soil. So for me, you can see the effects it's had in my garden. It's really helped bring the soil to life. Now the opposite of heavy clay soil would be something like sandy soil, which is really well drained and everything dries out really quickly. Now for something like that, it's much the same solution. Enrich it with organic matter and it's going to increase that soil's ability to hold on to water and in turn hold on to nutrients so that you can grow big leafy plants like this to get that big kind of bold tropical style in your garden. Okay, so tip number 2. I recommend that you curate your canvas. Now what do I mean by that? Curating your canvas is thinking about the backdrop in your garden. Now so many of us have garden fences, maybe the walls at the back of our house, maybe hedges. That backdrop is going to form one of the backbones of your garden, and it's going to help create a kind of a setting, the scene for your plants. Now for me, I've gone for a purple fence, and this darker colour is going to push the boundaries backwards and make my small garden feel much bigger, and that's a good tip. If you use bright colours, they can be really great at contributing to a colour scheme, but they can often make the boundary walls feel closer and close a space in. So darker colours really work well just to hide those boundaries, and with purple it's got the added bonus that purple offsets green and lush green tones. So things like banana plants and tropical style plants with big leaves really pop against that purple colour. Now I wasn't brave. I didn't choose this purple. My wife did it on her part of the garden and I thought, no, this isn't going to look good. When I saw how good it looked on her side of the garden, I had to add it to mine. So I've painted all of the boundary fences in this purple colour, and it's just had such a good effect. It's made the small space feel so much bigger. Now, something else that you could use is bamboo screening to create a tropical backdrop, and it's a nice cost-effective and fast way to cover an ugly wall. Or you can paint walls. The designer Manoj Molde did a really good garden design that was Mediterranean with kind of dusky oranges and washed out colours, and it just looked so good. So find something that suits the flavour that you want in your garden and curate that backdrop, because that's going to be the setting, the scene for the show that is all of the plants that we're going to add to your tropical style garden. Tip number 3, hide some parts of your garden so that you can never see all of it at once. Now why are we going to do this? It's a great way to make your small garden or large garden feel much bigger, and it encourages you to go out and explore the garden. Now if you can hear banging, it's because I'm in a very built up area and the neighbours are having work done, but it doesn't feel like that. It's secluded because everything's hidden and everything's just high enough that you can't see the boundary fences, you can't see all of the garden. Now in the Grow Paradise garden, we've got this central bed with an evergreen euphorbia and a roost tree creating a central canopy, and that just means that I have to walk around this bed to be able to see the whole garden. And by obscuring that, it makes this tiny area, it's about 4 meters by 3 meters, it makes it feel much bigger. Now you can do the same. You can put a central bed into your garden, take up an area of that lawn, or you can use hard landscaping, something like a garden arbor or arches, or maybe even a trellis. And just by hiding parts of the garden, it's going to encourage you to go out and explore, and it's going to make the whole space feel so much bigger. So tip number 4 is to plant your tropical style garden in layers. Now, I have spoken about this method so much on the Grow Paradise channel before. Layers is my way of mimicking how a forest or a rainforest would naturally grow. There are plants evolved for every niche in the layers, all the way from ground cover up to the canopy of the trees. And we can copy that in our own tropical style gardens, no matter where we are in the world. We don't actually have to have a tropical climate. We can find tropical style plants that will thrive and give the illusion of a tropical space. Now for me, plants like Asarum splendens or evergreen grass-like perennials are great ground cover plants. They create a lush green feel for 12 months of the year. When we go up one layer, we get plants like ferns, like this giant European chain fern, or hardy native ferns that really help to add a lush jungle feel, even though they're native to the UK or whatever country you might be growing your tropical style garden in. And then beyond that, we go to shrubs like this Fatsia polycarpa, which is a great tough evergreen. And this is a cultivar called Green Fingers because it's got these really nice deeply lobed leaves. And that looks super exotic, but it's tough. It's evergreen, so my garden looks tropical, even when it's snowing outside. Then beyond that, we can go up to trees. So I've got things like a loquat tree, I've got a roost tree covering the central canopy of my garden, a golden Indian bean tree. I've got a mix, again, of evergreens and deciduous plants just to create some autumn colour, so that I've got really nice interest in October and November when the deciduous trees are colouring up before they lose their leaves. And then in the depths of winter, the evergreen trees are keeping my garden still looking tropical, like I say, even when it's icy and snowing outside. The trick is just to find plants that are hardy enough for the area where you're growing that will provide that tropical look all year round. Now, the key to planting in layers is leading me to my 5th tip for growing a tropical style garden, and that is to start big and then go down to small. So what do I mean by that? To start big is to start with your biggest plants. So things like the trees and the large shrubs, because they're going to form the central structure of your garden, and then everything else is going to be planted around them. So I started with the trees that formed the key points in my garden, and they were really planned where I was going to plant them, either to block on-looking windows from the neighbours or to create shade from intense afternoon sun. And then around those, I plant the softer landscaping, things like the ferns, and I work my way down. It's a really good way to plant, and it helps you find order rather than just going to the garden centre and buying everything that looks nice and not really knowing where to put it. And I'm guilty of that, so I know a lot of you are as well. So tip number 6 is to use vertical space. And this one is great because if we are limited on space in our gardens, perhaps you've got a balcony, a very narrow garden, or a tiny garden like mine, then going vertical is going to help you maximize all of the space that you've got going up. And for me, one way that I found to do this is to tie plants into shrubs so that I'm making use of all of that vertical space. Now here you can see I've tied tropical bromeliads into the trees, and I've done a video showing you all how to grow this, so I will put a link to that in the description. And this just means that even on this naked branch of this dead part of the tree, it looks really tropical, and it emulates how it looks in the canopy of a tropical rainforest. Now, doing things like this is going to really elevate your garden, and growing plants that people don't expect to see outside in the UK, at least for the warmer summer months, is going to really give an element of surprise when people come into your garden. And by utilising that vertical space, even if you've got a step-out balcony, you're going to be able to grow plants all the way up a trellis, up a wall, maybe over the handrail, and you're going to be able to capitalise on whatever space you've got available. Now, bromeliads is one suggestion because they don't need soil. You can just tie moss around the roots and they will grow happily there all summer long, collecting the rainwater in the central rosette just as they would in a rainforest. But you could also grow air plants, which are in the same family, that you can buy in most garden centres, or you can grow climbers that will go up a trellis or up a post or up through any shrubs that you might have in the garden, and they're going to just help capitalize on that space. If you can get flowering climbers like clematis or the chocolate vine, then you're onto a winner. You're going to have big bold flowers, perhaps some scent, and you'll be using that vertical space. And this leads on to my next tip. Number 7 for growing a tropical style garden is to use bold structure. Now, no matter where you are in the world, using bold structure is going to really help create an exotic feel in your garden, because these exotic plants tend to have weird and wonderful leaves, and they grow enormous because they're typically competing in a forest or a rainforest. So in the UK and in so many other parts of the world, there are winter hardy plants that we can grow that will give us that same effect. Now, in this border behind me are some of the plants that I use, and a real showstopper is Brasseopsis mitis with this like snowflake looking leaf. It's really, really unusual. It grows tall on a very, very spiky stem that tends to get me when I forget about it. But it will take temperatures down to apparently -10. Now, this is the first time it's planted out in my garden, so we'll see what temperatures it takes at winter, but it has taken frosts for me with no issues at all. It loses its leaves and quickly regrows again in spring. We've also got the massive Musabasju bananas, the Japanese hardy bananas. These are root hardy to below -10 degrees Celsius, and if you do lose all of the top growth, they tend to regrow from the roots in spring, and you'll get 4 or 5 plants in the place where you had one that you lost during winter, and you can see the rate that these grow. This has sort of grown to double my height from about shoulder height in spring, and at this time of year, it's coming to late summer here, just past late summer, it's pushing out one of these new leaves every 4 or 5 days. The rate of growth is phenomenal. Now, a plant that's similar to Musabasju, it's not quite as hardy, but it's definitely worth a grow, is the Musa sycamensis red striped banana, commonly called the Darjeeling banana. Again, enormous leaves, but that one has maroon streaks over the surface of the leaf and like a coppery red underside. It's from the mountainous regions of Sikkim in India, so it's used to those tough conditions up there with the wind and the cold high altitude temperatures, so it makes it a good candidate for UK gardens. Now, by utilising bold structure and a mix of evergreens and deciduous plants, you're going to really give that tropical style, even if a lot of these plants will perfectly happily survive cold winters. One I've just seen here is this slightly unusual plant, so worth sharing. This is Boehmeria platyphylla. Now, I grew this from seed. It's in the stinging nettle family, but as you can see, I'm quite comfortable and safe touching it. This is a stingless plant. But the platyphylla part of the name indicates plate-sized leaves, and it's a really good exotic plant, exotic looking plant for countries that get slightly colder winters. Now, a tip while we're talking about bold foliage is to go for different shapes and colours to create interest. So I've got that really unusual snowflake leaf from Brasseopsis mitis right next to a big round leaf. So having the two next to each other really helps kind of accentuate the features of each. And that's sort of the theme running through this big, bold foliage border, which in the Grow Paradise tropical style garden, I've been calling the jungle style border. Now, this is only about a metre and a half from the fence, and about 2 or 3 meters long, but you can see how much I've grown here. And because of those dark boundary fences that we spoke about and the big, bold planting, it makes everything feel so much bigger. When you've got a small space, people are always scared to plant big, bold plants, and they'll go for lots of little things. But lots of little plants can often look really, really busy. By going for a select few big, bold plants, you're going to have much more of an effect, and it's going to make everything feel so much bigger around you. So let's move on to tip number 8 for growing a tropical style garden, and that is going to be using big, bold colours. Now, think of your uncle's favourite Hawaiian shirt and all of the colours that it's got on that shirt, and pick 3 or 4 of the colours out and base the colour theme of your tropical style garden on that Hawaiian shirt, and you'll get the colours that look great in tropical style gardens. Now, orange is one of them, and you can get orange in plants like this Brugmansia or angel trumpet, which is clearly a very exotic looking flower. It smells phenomenal and the blooms are enormous. I mean, it's larger than my head. You can also get colours from hard landscaping, so utilising the colours of the boundary fences like we spoke about earlier, or maybe you're going to paint some of the hard landscaping. You might have a red bridge like in Monet's lily pond painting. You can also just get as many colourful flowers as you can find. This one is another favourite of mine. It's a butylon, and this is a cultivar called Apfelsine. Or purples is always a favourite of mine. Now this is Brillantasia subulagurica, which is a name I always struggle to say, but its common name is the giant salvia, and you can see why. It's got these salvia-like blooms, but the purple works really well against the green. It complements that dark purple fence that I've got, and purple and orange are colours on opposite ends of the colour wheel, which is a tool that's used by designers to find colour schemes that work well, and these two look great next to each other. Now, using bold colours and using the Hawaiian shirt technique is a really good way to get the right colours for a tropical style garden, but a word of warning would be to try not to use too many colours, because it can have the same effect as using a lot of small plants. It can make the whole garden feel a little bit chaotic. So I tend to aim for 2 or 3 colours that will fit into the scheme of my garden. Now, I've got a small garden, so that colour theme sits for the whole garden. But if you've got a much bigger space to play with, you can of course have a red and purple themed bed in your garden, maybe a white themed bed, and different areas can have that colour theme. But in a small space, stick to 2 or 3, maybe 4 maximum colours, and it will make the whole space feel so much more cohesive. So tip number 9 for growing a tropical style garden is to use focal points. Now, the goal of focal points is to lead the eye where you want it to look, because in a tropical style garden with bold colours and bold foliage, it could be a bit hectic for somebody to look at, and they don't really know where to look. So the way to overcome that is to use focal points like this Corten steel water bowl, which is the one I use in the Grow Paradise garden. Now, this steel water bowl becomes kind of the key piece of this area in winter when all of the plants die back. But when all of these are the stars of the show, this stays here, and as you walk through the garden, it catches your eye and you look down to this, and it just gives you something to focus on, and it encourages you to come and explore this garden path. Now, a focal point could be something like this, water bowl or a water feature. It could also be a statue, a water fountain, maybe a nice summer house at the back end of the garden. It's anything that just catches the viewer's eye when they're kind of surveying a garden. You can even use a garden path as a feature with a lovely mosaic pattern flowing all the way down it. It's an opportunity really to showcase your sense of self, who you are, things that you like, because a focal point can be anything. So I love water features, and I've got this weird obsession with anything rusty. So this rusty Corten steel water bowl sort of ticked all of the boxes for me. But if you love weird sculptures, then use that as your focal point. If you like unusual garden buildings, or perhaps a hammock, a brightly coloured hammock, you can use that in your garden. It's a great opportunity to just show everybody who you are, and don't be afraid to just celebrate who you are. You don't have to buy everything that's in the catalogues. Make your garden unique to you, and believe me, you will enjoy it so much more. That brings me on to point 10 for growing a tropical style garden somewhere that doesn't necessarily have a tropical climate. And that's to grow feature plants like this Brugmansia in containers or pots, so that you can move them in to really visible areas when they are looking their best, and you can move them away and swap them out for something else when they are past their best. This is a great way, especially if you've got a small garden, to keep your whole garden looking great all year round, because you can just swap the pots in and out as the plants are looking great. And with this one coming into bloom with its fantastic double flowers, I've moved it right into a really visible area of the garden. Now this is great, especially if you're growing in a small space like a balcony garden. You can have an area where you move all of the best pots to the front of the balcony display, and then move them backwards as they start to fade, and move the next plants forward, and it will look good all year round. Hopefully this video has helped you out in growing a tropical and exotic style garden, no matter where you are in the world or how big or how small your garden might be. And if you have found it useful, please hit the subscribe button. It's the best way to support the Grow Paradise channel. And if you enjoy growing tropical and exotic style plants, we've created a Grow Paradise social network, which is a forum and community of gardeners who love this style of gardening from around the world. So sign up, create a free account, and you can share pictures and ask questions there and just be part of the Grow Paradise community. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.